When experimenting with new technologies, there are obviously going to be some designs that don't work out as desired. British Rail is a prime example of this, as by the 1960s they had produced their own fair share of experimental and ineffective diesel engines. Many of these locomotives were unique or unusual for one reason or another, but few might have been as bizarre as the Co-Bos. By the mid-1950s, the call had been put out by British Railways to companies all across the country for them to design diesel locomotives to work on the railways. 3 different kinds of diesel were needed: Type 1, Type 2 and Type 4, with the Type 1s being for branch line and lighter goods work, Type 2s being for mixed traffic, and the Type 4s for heavy-duty mainline work. One of the companies to answer this call was Metropolitan-Vickers of Stockton-on-Tees, who came up with a design for a Type 2 diesel. Metropolitan-Vickers had previously built the Class A's for the ICE of Ireland, which were proving to be somewhat of a success, and so they essentially copied the design for British Railways, making a few adjustments to the body and internals. Unlike the other diesels being built across the country, Vickers decided to use low-speed 2-stroke V8 Crossley engines thanks to the influence of Oliver Bulleid instead of the standard 4-stroke, something they also did when building the Class A's. These engines also had exhaust pulse pressure charging, essentially making them supercharged, and could develop around 1200 horsepower. Aside from the engine though, the design was pretty standard, measuring in at 56 feet 7.5 inches long, being fitted with 3 foot 3.5 inch driving wheels, a steam generator, a cab at each end, and fairly bog standard electrical equipment. Initially, these locomotives were to run on a pair of 4-wheeled bogies, giving them a Bobo wheel arrangement. However, at some point during their construction, one of these bogies was changed to a 6-wheeled set instead, giving them an unusual Co-Bo arrangement. Why specifically this was done, however, isn't really known. It's believed that because of how the internal equipment was arranged, more weight was centered on one bogie than the other, which would have caused it to exceed the 20-ton axle load that BR specified. Having both bogies be 6-wheeled, however, would have spread the weight out too much and made the axle load too light, causing wheel slip. So one bogie having 6 wheels while the other had 4 was a good compromise. Just as likely, however, is that the mismatched bogies was simply a cost-saving measure, since it meant one less axle to maintain in the long term. 20 were built by 1959, being deemed the Class 28s, and put to work on the London Midland region, pulling the fast freight Condor service between London and Glasgow, as well as the notoriously heavy London-Glasgow sleeper train. Despite being Type 2s, the Class 28s proved to be quite powerful, capable of pulling some of the heaviest trains on their own quite handily. Their unique wheel arrangement also made them quite the sight for train spotters. Even those who were generally apathetic towards the diesels that were replacing steam seemed to have a soft spot for them. Engine crews and enthusiasts alike took to nicknaming the 28s Metro-Vics or Crossleys due to their engine, but were most notably known as Co-Bos. While train spotters might have been fond of the Metro-Vics, engine crews weren't. The cabs were initially built with wraparound windows on either side to help provide drivers with a better view, but due to problems with excessive vibration, these were prone to coming loose and falling out, meaning crews had to fail the locomotive. The windows, however, were the least of the Co-Bos' problems, as the Crossley engines proved to be a major detriment. From the get-go, the diesels often suffered from engine failure. The heavy work they did usually required 2 engines working together, but even on some services where only one locomotive would suffice, 2 were still used just in case one of them broke down during the trip. Their engines also produced a significant amount of smoke and noise too, the lack of ventilation not helping matters in the cab. Funnily enough, the CIE in Ireland was reporting similar problems with their Class A's around the same time, and it wasn't long before British Rail had enough, sending all 20 units back to Metropolitan Vicars to be refitted and refurbished in 1961. Vickers managed to amend some of the mechanical issues and replace the curved windows with flat glass. The electrical equipment was perfectly fine, but for some reason the decision was made to keep the problematic Crossley engines instead of replacing them. As such, they ended up continuing to fail once being brought back into service despite the modifications made. They were relocated to Barrow-in-Furness in 1961 to work passenger and freight services, moving up to the northwest of England in 1967. Naturally, British Railways wasn't interested in building any more and were eager to dispose of them once a suitable replacement was found. Withdrawals of the class began in 1967, and by 1969 all but one of them were scrapped. The final one, D5705, was used by BR's research division before being used for carriage heating at the Bath Road Depot in Bristol. Being the last of its kind, enthusiasts were keen to preserve it, and in 1980 it was put to one side before being properly preserved in 1985. Since then, it's made its home at the East Lancashire Railway, and while not the most reliable diesel in preservation, it's perhaps one of the more well-loved. The Class 28s then certainly weren't special machines. Between the constant engine failures and windows that kept falling out, it's no wonder that British Railways were keen to replace them quickly. I suppose it's only natural that their unique design and faulty nature earn them a favourable reputation as underdogs among enthusiasts, but let them be a reminder that not every underdog has a good comeback story. Some are just mutts. Doesn't make them any less endearing though. Subscribe for more.